All right, so first of all, nice to meet everyone. My name is Aaron. So hopefully with today's session, what we're going to do is get a better understanding around what breathwork does for your performance, right? For your recovery, for your mental performance, and also for your physical performance too, right? So a brief introduction as to who I am and what I do. At the minute, I'm working as a performance coach, and I basically specialize in working with breathwork and human mechanics, so it's all connected. As I get older, throughout my career, I started to understand the nerves that you feel before you enter into a competition. I started to understand the anxiety that happened before performance, and it got to the point where I was like, right, maybe I need to take this breathwork stuff kind of serious. My career lasted, boom, had a bunch of fights, over 30 MMA fights, a bunch of jiu-jitsu competitions, a few kickboxing fights, and then one day I just decided to say, stop, I'm done with it. I can't be bothered competing anymore. I want to make money, I want to open a business, I want to start living life like a normal person, right? Then what happened was I get hit with the same things that every normal person gets hit with, right? Stress, anxiety, emails, phone calls, things that you have to do for the house, things that you have to do for this and that and that. And what basically happened was I got to the point where I got so stressed out, I just was not able to keep up with the pressure that was put on me. So then I found breathwork, and whenever I found breathwork, that allowed me to fall deep into the state of understanding how you can actually influence your stress and influence your recovery through breathwork. So what it is basically is there's three primary components of breathwork and how it can influence your performance, right? So there's three main components around how breathwork can influence your performance, right? Now, the first component is the biochemistry, right? I'm going to try to write it here. Biochemistry, right? Now, the biochemistry is all based upon two main areas, right? The first area is athletic performance, right? The second area is anxiety and stress. Now, when it comes down to the biochemical aspect of your breathing, what you got to think about is this, right? Who here has heard about breathing through the nose for performance? Right. Who here knows why it actually works? Can you tell me?
Calms you down.
It calms you down, right? There's one thing.
Releases the stress hormones, right?
Releases the stress hormones, right? It calms your nervous system and it makes you more relaxed, so it helps you become more focused, right? Is there any other reason why anybody else knows why this helps your performance?
It has to do something with carbon dioxide, right?
Bingo. Do you know what it does?
I think you. So I read a book about it, but I can't remember. Like it's like it increases the carbon dioxide levels in your blood, which it actually improves performance. I think somehow. But
You're right. You're right. So what it is basically is what happens is this, right? Carbon dioxide. We all know what carbon dioxide is, yeah? Cool dioxide. Cool dioxide is our primary stimulus to breathe. So what that means is this: every single time that you work out and you start to get exhausted or fatigued in a workout, right? You feel breathlessness, you feel like you have to catch your breath. That's not because you've ran out of oxygen, right? That's because you've built up too much carbon dioxide in the blood. So the more carbon dioxide you have in the blood, the more your brain signals to your diaphragm to breathe, right? So the harder you push, the more CO2 you build up in the blood. So your respiratory rate starts to increase, which means you breathe more, right? I do a hard roll. Okay, I try to recover, right? Because my body wants to get rid of this carbon dioxide because it's acidic. It makes us not feel very good, right? But the catch-22 with breathing off this carbon dioxide is that, so there was a famous Danish biochemist, right? And he came to the discovery in 1904 that the lesser the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the blood, the greater the affinity that oxygen had to the hemoglobin that was carrying it. So what does that mean? That basically means that if we breathe off loads of carbon dioxide, for example, when we're trying to recover from a hard roll, the more CO2 we get rid of within our body, the less oxygen we can absorb into our brain and into our muscles. So you think that you need to breathe harder to recover faster, but the opposite is actually true. The reason why the opposite is actually true is because what we need to do is learn how to tolerate more CO2 within the blood so that we can actually access more oxygen. Now, this is what we discuss in the biomechanical aspect of breathwork. How do we influence our performance by learning how to tolerate more carbon dioxide? And breathing through the nose is one way to do it, but it's not everything. It's just one little part of it. But the same is true for our brain, right? When you're tired at work or when you're exhausted at the end of the day, right? If we're not breathing correctly during the day, if we have a dysfunctional breathing pattern, then we're also offloading too much carbon dioxide throughout the day, which means we don't get enough oxygen to fuel our brain nor our body. That's why you yawn. That's why whenever you open up an email and you go, it's because your brain's not getting enough oxygen. And we need to train our brain and train our body to actually get more oxygen so that we can perform better during the day for everyday performance, and so that we can train better on the mats too. The second component is the biomechanics. So the biomechanics right now, for me, is the part that I'm most interested in. So I've spent so much time learning about the biochemistry, and I've spent so much time learning about the next thing we're going to go into, but this is where I'm currently at right now and expanding my knowledge for how breathwork can influence your performance. The biomechanics is everything, right? What it comes down to is essentially is the position of your ribcage. Are you using your diaphragm correctly? Has anyone felt the feeling before that when you try to take a deep breath in, you don't really get that full breath? You take a breath, it just feels a bit restricted. You don't flood the full body. Well, this is because of the biomechanical aspect. This is because your diaphragm isn't working effectively. You see, your diaphragm is located underneath your ribcage, right? And what's supposed to happen when you breathe in is that your diaphragm is supposed to pull downwards like this, and it's supposed to open and pull air into the lungs. And as you breathe out, it's supposed to relax, and that lets air out. But the problem is that we suffer from so many dysfunctions in our body through jiu-jitsu, number one, we all know that, through sitting in a chair for too long, that the majority of people end up in a position where they're stuck with a bit of an anterior tilt in their hips. So their hips are pushed forward. And at the same time, this forces our rib cage to posteriorly tilt, right? So then our whole body weight shifts forward and we're stuck in this sort of like sphincter in the lower back and this opening in the rib cage. Now, this forces our diaphragm into a concentrically orientated position, which means that it cannot contract properly. So in the biomechanical aspect of things, what we try to do is we try to train the diaphragm so that we can then get full breaths in, release. And as we do this, what starts to happen is our rib cage will start to transverse downwards into the correct position. Now, whenever we're stuck in a position where we do have a flared rib cage and we do have an anterior tilt, what starts to happen is our body weight shifts forward. It forces our head forward. So if you ever feel like you get headaches from tension in your neck, do you ever feel like you get sore, tight internal rotation in the shoulder? It's because of that. Do you ever get a dodgy knee on the right foot? Does your left foot ever cave in like this so you look like you have a flat foot? That's all related to the position of the rib cage and the position of the diaphragm. How many times are we compressing our rib cage in jiu-jitsu? Every single position. Someone takes my back, puts a body triangle on, squeezes my rib cage. Someone gets side control, smashes my chest into the floor. Someone forces me into a stacked position and I'm smashing my rib cage down on top of each other. Do you ever walk out of jiu-jitsu and you're just like, oh, what is going on, right? Your forearms are fine, your shoulders are fine, your neck's a little bit crooked, your hips are a little bit off, but it all comes down to the position of the rib cage. If we can fix the position of the rib cage, everything else follows suit and we don't feel as much pain. We walk much more fluidly and we also recover much quicker because your body's not trying to adapt to this newfound position. So finally, the part we're going to go into right now is the psychophysiological aspect of things, right? So the psychophysiological aspect of breathwork is all based upon how we can influence our recovery and how our body deals with stress, right? Anytime I stepped on the mats, I always felt it, right? Maybe it was a situation where your first day on the mats in jiu-jitsu, you feel those nerves, right? Now those nerves can help, but they can also degrade your performance, right? And it's all tied down to your nervous system, right? When we feel stress, we have an ability to fight with it or to run away from it. But the problem is that whenever we experience too much stress, whether it's a competition aspect or whether it's an everyday aspect, the question is where are we at on the scale of what's too much? This is your breath, all right? Oh, shit. You breathe in, you breathe out, 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 right? This is known as your respiratory sinus arrhythmia, right? Every time you breathe in, your heart rate increases. Every time you breathe out, your heart rate decreases, right? And you can literally test that right now. We're not going to, but you can test it literally within the moment. This is so much more important than what it may sound right now, because if your breath influences your heart rate, then obviously it's connected to the nervous system, because you've got two branches of the nervous system. The first branch, does anybody know the two branches of the nervous system? You're on it today, aren't you? You're on it. All right. So that book, whatever that book was, mate, it worked. All right. What we need to understand is the two branches of the nervous system. The first, most important branch, in my opinion, is the parasympathetic branch. Now, the parasympathetic branch is responsible for recovery. It's responsible for rest and digest. It's responsible for relaxation, happiness. If you're sitting on the sofa with your husband, your wife, your friends, whatever, and you're laughing, you're talking, that's your parasympathetic dominance happening right there, right? So this is where all of the good feelings happen in life, right here. In the sympathetic branch of the nervous system, this is responsible for fight or flight, right? This is responsible for acting quickly under pressure, right? So when our arousal state, and when I mean arousal, I mean stress. When stress rises in our mind and in our body, what happens is our respiratory sinus arrhythmia changes, right? So our heart rate doesn't decrease that much whenever we breathe out. It just continues to increase with every breath we take in. And this is the same thing that whenever it comes to like opening an email, or if you're stressed out at work and you breathe and you take a breath in and you open your email and you're like, God damn it, or someone comes in, you're like, yeah, you take a phone, yeah, you get these short, shallow breaths. And what happens is an increase in the heart rate. So the more that our heart rate increases, the more we start to enter into a sympathetic dominance. So if we get stuck up into a sympathetic dominance, it's very hard for us to then enter a state of flow. Where does flow happen? We've all experienced flow, right? We know what flow is. You get into that position where things happen effortlessly, and the next thing you know, like 45 minutes has disappeared, right? Flow happens when you're on the perfect balance between parasympathetic and sympathetic dominance. Our arousal state, our stress levels are constantly being forced to elevate up. And whenever we're constantly stressed out, we're living more in a sympathetic dominance, which means that we're more of a fight or flight at all times. So what we want to try to do is learn how to stimulate this parasympathetic branch down here. Because the more we can stimulate this parasympathetic branch, the stronger and more resilient we can make it. Now, breath work is a way to do this. It's one of the most powerful ways I've ever found to do it. Breath work acts like a trigger point. Just like when you do like foam rolling, and you foam roll your thigh or your back, and you find that knot, you find that spot that's super rigid, super tough, and you just continue to roll on it and relax onto it, and it releases everything and lets go. That's what breath work does for stress and anxiety. So what we're going to do today is we're going to learn how to do breath work so that we can then stimulate this part of our nervous system so that we can enter better states of flow whenever we roll, whenever we try to recover, and basically in all areas of life. We're going to take a deep breath into the belly, like I said earlier. Then we're going to hold our breath, and we're going to take another breath in, filling the chest. What we are doing right now is simply activating our diaphragm. We are teaching our diaphragm to work correctly so that we can influence our nervous system.
I feel like I just want to fight somebody. I don't know what it is.
I definitely think I disappeared for a while. That's really tingling. I got into like a state of childhood. Like I felt like a kid again. I can't really explain it in any other way. In the past, I used to feel pain whenever I breathed through my chest. So I always used to breathe it through here. And then when you instructed us to use the whole upper body, it kind of released some pain and almost pain and some uncomfortable feeling that I've had for quite a while. So I'm really thankful for that. But other than that, I felt the tingly sensation as almost everybody else.
I'm mind blown. That was beautiful. Thank you.